Hello and welcome to the Menopause Unplugged podcast with me, your host, Nikki Olivera. Today I have the pleasure of having Evelyn Scott with me. Evelyn is an author and an advocate for women's health. So I'm so excited to have Evelyn here in the studio. How are you doing, Evelyn? Okay?
I'm doing really well. I'm really happy to be here on this miserable rainy day. So it's a little bit of light in my life. This awful weather going on.
Oh, absolutely. It's the same here where I am. But Evelyn, you are currently suffering with endometriosis and, are doing such amazing work to kind of raise awareness for endometriosis in the UK. So I really want to help our listeners really understand, first of all, what endometriosis really is.
So endometriosis is a chronic pain condition, really, and it's where the official medical journal. Sorry, can I start that again?
Yes, of course.
So the official definition of endometriosis is where tissue similar to the lining of the uterus grows outside of the uterus, causing pain and potentially affecting fertility. It can also cause very, very painful periods, severely heavy periods, lots of bleeding, lots of clotting. It can cause debilitating brain fog, weakness, full body pain. And recent research has actually found that it's actually an inflammatory condition, so it's not necessarily a gynecological condition as it has been categorized before. It's actually an entire body condition that affects every part of the body.
Wow, okay. So, you kind of touched on how it typically kind of presents in women, but why is it then so often missed and undiagnosed?
I think it suffers from being a women's health condition, and I think we're stuck in a narrative where if a woman presents with pain and all tests return normal and a person looks okay, someone with endometriosis will often present as okay, visibly okay anyway, it will just be dismissed. So women's pain has often been dismissed. It dates back to Victorian times when everything was everything was defined as hysteria. So we had theories of the wandering womb, where the womb would wander around the body, causing absolute carnage, and that would cause painful periods and things. And we're still kind of stuck in that narrative where the world thinks that women's pain is it's all in her head. So it's very it's dismissed worldwide, and it has been for a long time. And I think that's why women often go undiagnosed and ignored.
Yeah, yes, that's it exactly. But what were your sort of first symptoms or signs of that you experienced?
So I had my first period in my early teens, and I grew up with a single father who didn't really know much about women's periods. God love him. And so I learned what a normal period was from all my friends, and everyone's periods kind of looked the same. And I realised pretty quickly when I started mine that mine was really heavy, a lot heavier than other people's. I was bleeding through my school uniform. I was so sick the week of my period, I couldn't function. So there were weeks where I'd have to take, the entire week of school just to stay home because I was doubled over in agony. I was being sick. I had all these horrible symptoms that I was totally unprepared for. And at the time, I remember looking around at my friends and thinking, okay, well, my best friend's period looks like this. And actually, she used to quite heavily clot during her period. And she found out years later that she had PCOS, and that went undiagnosed. But she thought that was normal as well. But a lot of my other friends, they had periods that were inconvenient. They weren't, they were annoying and frustration, but they weren't debilitating in the same way that mine were. And I did talk to my doctor about it, and he basically said, periods are supposed to be painful. They're supposed to be uncomfortable. You're going through puberty. This is normal. When you get a bit older, it will even out and you'll feel okay. And that didn't happen for me, but I did go back several times, and I was told, I needed to tough it out and stop being whiny. I think the words used were. which is horrific to say to a young girl who's experiencing these things for the first time. And it kind of sends that message that, nobody cares about your pain. And it also makes you doubt your own experience of the pain, which is what I did a lot of over the years. I've always sort of thought maybe it is all in my head, maybe the doctors are right. But then you're like, well, no, actually, I'm experiencing this horrible thing. Why can't anybody else see it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, it's a horrible thing to experience, to think that you're just being like a hypochondriac almost. You're
Absolutely,
just
yeah.
being too sensitive when you're not.
But that's a
So
women thing, isn't it? If
yeah,
if you present in any situation like you're not coping and you need a
mm,
bit of help, everyone just goes, she's too sensitive, she's so sensitive, and it's so frustrating and massively insulting.
absolutely. Yeah, especially coming from a male doctor.
Yeah. Which it often does, unfortunately. And
Yeah,
I have had experiences with female doctors that are very similar, where there's been this complete lack of understanding, and then they're like, well, my period's fine, so yours should be fine. Whereas it doesn't work like that. But
no,
yeah,
yeah. So how long did it take then, Evelyn, for you to get a diagnosis then?
took me 15 years, and it was horrendous. I mean, I went to college, I went to university, with these horrible periods that usually resulted in me having to take the week of my period off. And then it was the week of ovulation as well. My
Mm.
ovulation time got really, really painful. In fact, sometimes it was actually worse than the period itself. The pain was just so overwhelming. So I had to work around that. And then, it got to a point where I was experiencing pain every day, and I was actually bleeding frequently. So not just during my period. So I'd spend those years in and out of hospital rooms where I'd end up calling an ambulance, or I'd end up taking myself to hospital because I just couldn't manage the pain myself. And the doctors would run routine tests, which we've now know that endometriosis doesn't show up on routine tests, and actually a lot of conditions don't.
Mm.
And there was always this reluctance to refer me to gynecology. And then when I did go to gynecology, their response was she needs to go on the pill. So I would try all these pills, I'd try all these
Yeah.
hormonal treatments, and I'd actually feel worse. And I'd go back and say, I'm experiencing these horrible side effects. I don't like being on this medication. And again, it was ride it out, it will settle. And it never did for me. So I spent years in pain, and I was very frustrated, and I didn't really understand why no one could sort of see, and there were
Yeah.
a lot of people in my life who were quite dismissive because I didn't have a diagnosis. They thought, she's a hypochondriac, there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
her, she's just being dramatic. And it just so happened I got admitted to hospital when I was 30,
Hmm.
and I was in pain, and I was on morphine. I think I'd taken naproxen, and I was just waiting for the doctor to come round and do the same spiel, you're fine, there's nothing wrong, but
Yeah.
here's some painkillers to take home. So you're fine, but we're going to give you lots of painkillers. Never really made much sense to me, but that was what I'd come to expect. And then a doctor came round, and he listened to me, and he just said, I think you've got endometriosis. And I was like, where have you been?
Yeah.
For my entire life. And he just happened to be an endometriosis specialist. There aren't many of them in the UK. So it was
Wow.
complete luck that I ended up in accident and emergency on a night where an endometriosis specialist gynecologist was on call. Because I think if that hadn't happened, I would probably still be in pain now. And he
Wow.
ended up referring me to his clinic and agreed to do an investigative surgery. And that was when mine was found.
Oh, so lucky. So lucky,
Yeah.
Evelyn.
And it shouldn't be about luck, should it? That's the
No,
most infuriating thing. Like, I'm very
absolutely.
grateful, but I worry about women that don't have these encounters and also not able to advocate for themselves, because I'm quite strong and I've always managed to fight for myself. But I know a lot of women can't do that. And I've had moments where I've gone, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. I mean, endometriosis is so much more than just, bad period pain or, that sort of female health pain. Can you tell us a little bit more, Evelyn, about how it affects like your whole body?
So it's very, I mean, it's often misdiagnosed as pancreatitis. So when people go into hospital, they get pain in their side. So it will
Mhm.
even be they'll think you've got pancreatitis, you've got kidney stones because it will hurt when you're urinating, it will hurt when you go to the toilet. So it also gets often mistaken for IBS, which is interesting because IBS and kidney infections do frequently occur alongside endometriosis, but it
Yeah.
affects your bowels in a huge way. So for the last 20 years, I've had to be on laxatives to help me go to the toilet
Oh my.
because I take very strong painkillers, but also because going to the toilet causes me immense pain because I have endometriosis on my bowel, which has
Mm.
inflamed my entire bowel. I also have it in my urethra and my kidneys, which means I get kidney infections. It hurts to wee. I'm often having to use a catheter. But it also causes things like hormonal headaches, which are really, really debilitating, where you can't focus at all. You're very, very tired, and it's because your body is in this huge inflammatory response where you it doesn't know what to do. You get breast pain, you get joint pain, you can get pelvic pain. A lot of people with endometriosis also report having shooting pains in their legs. So it does affect every part of the body, and this tissue has been found on most parts of the body. It can affect everywhere. So it will attack organs wherever they are and cause side effects, which then confuse doctors because you're getting what was considered a gynecological issue all over your body. So if you have thoracic endometriosis, which is endometriosis in your lungs, you can actually cough up menstrual blood, which
Wow.
people, if you start coughing up blood, you wouldn't think, that you are effectively perioding. It's horrendous. You'd think there was something awful, like you had a chest infection, you had pneumonia, but because it attacks every part of the body, it affects every part of the body and in different ways. And one of the most confusing things about endometriosis, and if we had more research we would know why, is that everybody presents with different symptoms. So some people will have very small amounts of this tissue and
Hmm.
they will have really, really serious symptoms. And other people will have lots and have no symptoms. There's this huge disparity between people's experiences and the severity of the disease, which we just don't understand.
Okay. Wow. I mean, you spoke a little bit earlier about, some of the sort of symptoms that, you've experienced depending on where you are in your cycle. But what's the sort of more day-to-day symptoms that you're experiencing and living with?
So I have very bad pelvic pain. I wake up and I get out of bed and I can feel that my pelvis is very stiff. It's very crampy and sore. I also have a very bloated stomach. Um, so it's called endo belly, but it basically presents as if you're 9 months pregnant. It's very swollen, very sore. You get these horrible spasmodic cramps. That's what I get. I also get very bad headaches. I experience very bad brain fog and tiredness as well. So the fatigue is really debilitating. You feel like you just can't do anything. Like simple tasks like making yourself a cup of tea are exhausting. I
Yeah.
also get very bad pain when I go to the toilet, which has caused me a lot of anxiety, to be honest, because I'm quite nervous about going to the toilet, and when I go out and about I'm always aware of where the toilets are, and sometimes it's not uncommon to find me crying on the toilet because I'm in
Oh,
so much pain. um yeah, it's not pleasant at all.
no. I mean, that's, it sounds like, it's very much taking over your life.
It
I mean,
does.
yeah. How does that then affect, like, your ability to work, your relationships, and so on?
It affects everything. I mean, I used to work, I was doing a PhD, I wanted to be an academic, I was trying to build this career, and my health just wasn't reliable enough for me to be consistent at work. So I was having to take a lot of time off because I was in pain, and it affected everything. When I was in college and doing my first degrees, I had to take a lot of time off and had to have conversations about whether I was even going to be able to complete these degrees because my symptoms were so horrendous and my health was awful. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about enough is the impact it has on relationships, and not just romantic relationships, but with friendships too. So if you're lucky enough to have understanding friends, it's, you know, that is wonderful. But a lot of people lose a lot of friends because people don't understand how unreliable your health is. You become the person that cancels coffee meets and going out, and you
Yeah.
can't go out drinking and things like that because you're on all this medication. So it's really, really tough. And I lost a lot of friendships because I was the girl that couldn't ever make any meetings. And also when you date somebody, I mean, I was in a relationship for quite a while, and I speak about this in my book, but he didn't understand how painful sex was. Sex was quite distressing for me. And it's quite distressing and painful for a lot of people with endometriosis, but we don't talk about it because it's sort of embarrassing. It's considered as sort of a taboo subject. But it becomes really, really difficult to navigate intimate relationships. And,
Yeah.
you know, if you have an understanding partner, again, that's great. But I found people get frustrated with me having to cancel plans again, like plans to see family. You know, you end up in and out of hospital when you're supposed to be going away on holiday together. It's really difficult. It literally eats into everything. And even with families, you know, families just don't know how to communicate with you about this disease, mainly because there's not enough knowledge out there and people don't know enough about it. But again, you become that unreliable person that can't be counted on and is probably way too sensitive. You get sort of cast in that role of, you know, she's just the really sensitive one that, you know, is always ill, and people just don't tend to believe it, or they get fed up with it. So it's quite an isolating and lonely journey.
Yeah, I can imagine, you know, even like that case of, you know, plans being let down, and then the people just stop asking, don't they? And it's such a shame.
They do, and it's awful because you want to be invited to feel that you're still part of something, but at the same time people don't invite you, and you end up feeling this massive abandonment, which doesn't help you mentally at all. It's horrible.
No, absolutely. I mean, before your hysterectomy then, like what other treatment options were you offered?
So I was offered the pill, various forms of it. I was offered the Mirena coil. I tried that. I also tried the implant. Just didn't work for me. I later found out that a lot of the hormones in these forms of treatment are synthetic, which can sometimes cause havoc for people with endometriosis because it makes the tissue quite sticky. I had various surgeries, ablation surgeries, and I really thought they were going to help me. They were presented to me as, you know, some people have one and then they don't ever need help again. And I was really hoping I'd be that person, but I wasn't. So I've had about 5 of those now. Yeah, and they're very painful. They're very invasive. The recovery is brutal. And actually, I think I ended up getting about 6 months relief from each one. And yeah, I just felt that it wasn't worth it at all. And I was constantly going back. And then I'd be told, you know, that there was lots of endo removed so that they probably wouldn't find any more. But then after the surgery, they'd say, look, we've removed substantially more. So it's awful. And I do feel that if I'd been listened to earlier and if people had investigated my symptoms, mine wouldn't be as bad or as progressive as it's become.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a lot of misinformation around hysterectomies and their ability to sort of cure endo. You know, what were you kind of told around that?
So I was told that a hysterectomy would be a definitive cure. And I latched onto that 100% because I was desperate, like many women in my position are. We want to believe that there's an end in sight. So I went into my hysterectomy thinking, you know what, I'm going to be able to have a life again after this. I'm going to be able to have relationships. I'm going to be able to go to gigs again. I used to go to lots of gigs. I would be able to be really active again. I was really, you know, hopeful. And a few people had said to me, you know, hysterectomy isn't a cure. But I really wanted to believe that it was. And I had spoken to women who'd had one and never had any problems again. So I was kind of willing to try absolutely anything at
Yeah.
that point. So I did have it, and it was 10 times more brutal than any other surgery I've ever had. The recovery was horrific. And so I'd say recovery probably took me about 5 to 6 months. I was really uncomfortable, had multiple prolapses, which were just delightful.
Yeah.
and and then I had about a month where I felt great, and then all the pain came back and all the symptoms came back. So yeah, it was rubbish.
My goodness. I mean, what do you wish that you knew before kind of going into the sort of down the hysterectomy route?
I wish I'd known definitively how much relief I was going to get. I think, I was under the illusion that, the endo is just on my uterus and my fallopian tubes and things. So when that was all
Yeah.
gone, it would go. But in hindsight, because I had endo, my kidneys, my bowels, taking all that away wasn't going to fix the other areas. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think, but again, I don't think that's necessarily something that the doctors could have given me, because they don't have the information themselves. There's a
No.
substantial lack of research and on endometriosis and how to
Hmm.
treat it. And some treatment options work brilliantly for some women, others don't. It's a very tricky area, and having spoken to a lot of endometriosis researchers, they all say, we just don't know enough about this disease. It very much is a trial and error, which is awful when you consider that, you're going through massive surgeries in the hope that you
Yeah.
may get relief. But unfortunately, there are no guarantees, and there's no clear information about what will work and what won't work.
Yeah. I mean, what would you say to women who are maybe going to go and speak to their doctor about having a hysterectomy to kind of help with their endo?
I think they need to go in and ask for transparency. I think, they need to go in and get all the facts, also look at the recovery time. I mean, I was told that I'd be walking around after 2 months. That was a lie in
Yeah.
a big way. If you're going to have a hysterectomy, give yourself 6 months at least, but also know that it isn't a definitive cure, and
Mm.
be able to discuss other pathways after a hysterectomy if it doesn't work for you, because it's one hell of an operation. And obviously you go into surgical menopause, that's a massive trial in itself. Make sure you're prepared for it. So a lot of women have hysterectomies and they're not put on HRT, which I don't understand. They should
Yes.
be. They absolutely should be. And yet they're having these hysterectomies, they're going through this brutal recovery, and they're getting all these other symptoms of menopause that they don't understand. And it's only through talking to other women or doing your own research online that you think, well, hang on a minute, I'm supposed to be supported by HRT and I haven't been offered that. So
Yeah.
make sure you do your research and perhaps go in with bullet points saying, I want to discuss HRT, I want to discuss the recovery, I want to know, talk to you about and have a proper conversation, an open and sincere conversation about whether this is really going to help me or hinder me.
Hmm.
I think it's all about honesty and communication. I think a lot of doctors, again, they don't have the information to give you, but I wish they'd say that. Rather than sort of say, this is going to make you feel 10 times better, I would much rather someone say to me, we don't know if this is going to work. We can try
Yeah.
it, and this is what you'll need to do afterwards to support yourself to get through this, because that would have made a massive difference to me. I wasn't put on HRT after my hysterectomy.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to go and
So
see a specialist, a private hormone
did they sort
doctor.
of prepare you that you were going into medical menopause, or was that just you found
They
that out
said
for
you may go into
me?
menopause. I wasn't told what that would look like. I wasn't given any information about symptoms. I actually went online and did my research myself, because I'm a bit of a dork and I like to research everything. So I wanted to make sure I was prepared. But no, I was just told that I would feel better in a couple of months.
Wow. And we know that that's not absolutely not it, you know. So talking about then being in menopause, which you are now, what sort of menopause symptoms kind of surprised you the most?
I think the hot and cold flushes, especially people often associate hot flushes with menopause. I was getting really bad cold flushes, so I would be freezing and could not understand it. And also the brain fog. I mean, I would have conversations, and as you probably saw at the beginning of this interview, my brain would just go, what? Where are we? Who are you? I've totally forgotten everything. And it's quite frightening. When it first happened to me, I was really worried. And I remember researching it and looking up things like dementia, like early onset dementia and stuff, because I thought, I'm losing my mind. I'm a writer, I'm an academic, I need my brain, so that was really frightening for me. Now I sort of laugh when it happens, I sort of laugh it off because I know it's part of it and that I'll be able to come back to it. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was quite shocking for me. And itches, I don't know whether I've spoken to a few women who get really itchy during menopause.
Yeah.
I was waking up in the night with horrendously itchy legs, and I'd rip the bed sheets off and be like, is there an ant in my bed? And it was just my skin doing funky menopause things. So yeah, I think all of it was a bit of it hit me like a truck, actually.
Yeah.
And there's a few of us in the endo community who've all come together and said, are you experiencing this? And we're like, yeah, we're like, okay, that's normal, great. But, we should have been told this by our doctors, and I laugh about it because it's just ludicrous, really. But thank God for the online communities, because I wouldn't have a clue otherwise.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So tell me, Evelyn, how does endo and menopause really then interact? Like, why is this such a difficult combination then for women?
I think it's the pain on top of everything else. So obviously with the menopause, you're going through this massive change. My anxiety levels went up tenfold as well. And I already suffer from anxiety and have suffered from anxiety, before I was diagnosed with endometriosis. So I end up getting very bad pain, which then sets off my anxiety, which is then, I think, made worse by menopause. So you end up very anxious, very stressed. But I think the pain is the worst part. I really do. I mean, the pain just overwhelms everything. It disrupts everything. So I'm always on very strong painkillers, and I feel like I'm on top of the pain a little bit, and then all of a sudden I'll have this hot flash or I'll have this really bad headache, and I'm like, okay, today I just need to be a little bit more kinder to myself, and maybe not be so hard on myself, not over fill my diary with lots of things. Because it's quite a difficult battle to navigate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm on progesterone, I'm on some HRT, which has helped, but again, it's sort of, sometimes I have good days, sometimes I have bad days, and I think
Yeah.
it's just being patient with yourself when that is the case, and remembering that you're going through something that's absolutely horrendous, and taking a step back and going, if your friend was experiencing this, what would you say to her? And just remembering to be very nice to yourself, because the interaction is brutal.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine the self-talk is very destructive. Being very hard on yourself. So,
Yeah.
no, very, very important. I agree. So what's then really helped you manage both your endo symptoms and your menopause symptoms together?
So I do, I know people laugh, but I do a lot of yoga. It just really helps bring me back to the present, makes me feel nice and grounded, makes me feel relaxed, especially when I'm getting a lot of stress. If I feel quite anxious, just doing yoga brings me right back to myself. Also, just scheduling self-care. People used to suggest this to me and I used to laugh, but now I go through my diary and I block out days of self-care, and I'll go, okay, well, I'm doing X, Y, and Z on these days. This is going to be quite hard on me. I'm going to schedule the next day for nothing, and on that day I will fill it with nice things like going for a walk, getting outside. I think getting outside into nature is one of the best things you can do when you're really struggling. And again, I used to laugh when people said that to me, and then I did it and I was like, wow, there's actually something in this.
Yeah.
Just as, again, like looking at the things you're eating, things you're putting into your body, just really like focusing in on that self-care and doing everything to support yourself. But again, the self-talk and stuff is so important. But also, if you are struggling, go to the doctor and
Hmm.
speak to them. I mean, I work with two menopause doctors, and they are fantastic, and they've really helped me get through it. Like, I felt like I should suffer on my own, and actually that's not the case. The resources are out there.
Yeah.
Sadly, the best ones you often have to pay for, which I feel is just, horrendous. And I really hope the landscape changes, because things like testosterone have been a game changer for me, and I know that a lot of women can't get that. So,
Yeah.
and yet it helps so many women.
Hmm.
So, but you have to go to a private doctor to be prescribed it, or to even be explained how it can help you and what it does. So, yeah.
Yeah. Because there is a lot of misinformation around, testosterone and other hormones as well right now.
I think because they have no choice but to go online
Yeah.
and listen to other people who aren't doctors. And I always say on my videos, on my Instagram, I'm not a doctor, but this is what's helping me. And it's very easy to pick up misinformation because we are all learning together.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do think that hysterectomy is a cure for endometriosis. So
Mm.
when I came back online and made a video about how I was in pain again, how I'd been back to the hospital, I think, so I had about 1,000 people who were hugely supportive, and then there were about 4 that were sort of said, right, you can't be in pain still. You've had a hysterectomy. And I was writing out responses to these people, and then I just stopped myself, because I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, there's no point arguing, you know.
Yeah.
But I even had a doctor say to me, you've had a hysterectomy, you shouldn't be in pain. And I just thought, my God, am I going to have to sit here and tell you how it is? But it's because people don't know. So there's lots of facts and figures flying around. I mean, for a long time, I thought thoracic endometriosis in your lungs was rare. And then I
Yeah.
suddenly find out that actually it's not rare. It's just really underdiagnosed. So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, what one thing would you wish that every woman knew about endometriosis?
I wish that they'd know that a lot more people suffer from it than they realise. So it is as common as diabetes. Statistically, you will know somebody with endometriosis, whether they
Hmm.
realise it or whether they've been diagnosed or not. And I would say to people who do know people who have endometriosis or suspect they do, to listen. I wish that people would listen and believe women when they say they're in pain, because it affects everything. It's a bad enough condition to live with, and yet when you have people telling you they don't believe you, or you're just being hysterical, it just creates a whole other load of trauma, which takes years and years to undo. I'm
Yeah.
still working through that trauma now, and actually I often think, if someone had just been a bit kinder, I wouldn't have to deal with this on top of everything else.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, Evelyn, what message do you want to give to someone listening who feels really unheard or unsupported?
I would say go to your doctors and ask to see an endometriosis specialist. And also take a bit of paper with questions on it. So bullet point your questions and make sure you ask them. Don't be afraid to ask these questions. This is your body. And when you're dismissed, a great one I learnt from the Menstrual Health Project, Gabriella, she says to the doctors, well, can I have it noted on my records that I
Mm.
asked about this and you dismissed it? And they very quickly, suddenly, they change their minds very, very quickly. So don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. And if you can't do that, and if you don't feel able to, and I have days where I can't, there's a lot of really good charities out there that offer buddy up appointments. So they'll have people who know what they're talking about that can
Amazing.
go with you to appointments, or who can Zoom with you before your appointment if they can't get to you because they're in a different area. They
Mm.
can prepare you for appointments. The resources are there. It's just you have to look a bit deeper for them, but they are there and they are brilliant. And they're run
Amazing.
by women with endometriosis, so it's all lived experience stuff.
Wonderful, Evelyn. So, where can people get in touch with you or find out more about you?
So if you find me on Instagram, it's Evelyn Scott 1987, very original. My book, A Bloody Scandal, is out with Fourth Estate HarperCollins in August next year, and that is a worldwide look at gynecological neglect. It includes lots of case studies, lots of changes that I would like to see implemented. But again, feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to talk to people over Instagram. There's a lovely community over there, and I love speaking to people. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm really keen to help make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else again.
Amazing. Such an informative episode. Thank you so much, Evelyn. And as always, I will put everything in the show notes for everyone as well.
Thank
So
you for having me.
thank you so much, and we'll speak soon, Evelyn.
Speak soon. Bye bye.
Bye.